Last summer, right about the time the heat settled in and everything started demanding water twice a day, I did what I've done for most of my gardening life. I dragged the hose out after supper, stood there in my boots, and just soaked the top of my beds until it looked good. Then I went inside feeling responsible, and I woke up the next morning to pepper leaves already drooping like I'd done nothing at all. That's the moment it finally hit me. I wasn't really watering my garden. I was just wetting the surface and paying for the privilege, and what made it worse is, later that same week, I walked past an Amish neighbor's place here in Lancaster County, and his garden looked calm, not soaked, not muddy, just steady. Tomato leaves relaxed, beans upright, soil dark under the plants like it had been holding on to moisture for days. I finally asked him, "How in the world are you keeping up with this heat without running water all evening?" He kind of smiled like he'd heard that question before, and he walked me over to the bed edge. He didn't point at a sprinkler or a fancy drip line. He pointed at the ground. And then he showed me a simple watering method that gets moisture down where roots actually live, keeps the surface drier so you don't invite as many problems. And this part still amazes me, lets you water less often without stressing your plants. Today, I'm going to walk you through exactly how I saw Amish and Mennonite families do it, and how you can start using it in your own backyard without turning your whole garden upside down. And stick around to the end, because I'll share a small, almost too simple trick they use to stop evaporation at the source, one that kept my beds from crusting over in August and made my watering last noticeably longer. Now, I want to be clear right up front. For years, my conventional approach worked fine. I grew food, I got tomatoes, cucumbers, peppers, the whole deal. I'm not here to act like the hose is wrong or sprinklers are bad, but what I was doing wasn't efficient, and it wasn't consistent. I'd water heavy, then miss a day, then water heavy again, and the plants were riding a roller coaster. And that inconsistency shows up as blossom drop, bitter cucumbers, split tomatoes, and that overall tired look plants get by mid-season. What I learned from Amish gardeners in Lancaster County and from a Mennonite friend who grows at a larger scale over in Holmes County, Ohio, is that they treat watering like part of a whole system. Soil structure, mulch, timing, spacing, even compost, none of it stands alone. And this is where you start to see how it all connects. When the soil holds moisture better, plants handle heat better. When the surface stays drier, disease pressure drops. When plants are less stressed, insects don't overwhelm them as easily. The Amish don't do anything in isolation. Every technique ties into everything else, and the system is what makes the difference. And here's where the science backs them up. Modern soil research and extension work has been saying for years that the biggest waste in summer watering is evaporation and shallow wetting. If your water only ever lives in the top inch or two, the sun takes it back before roots can. Subsurface moisture, moisture stored a few inches down, lasts longer, pushes roots deeper, and keeps plants steadier. That's not folk wisdom, that's soil physics and plant biology agreeing with what these communities have been practicing for generations. So let me walk you through what this looked like in real life for me, what I watched, what I tried, what I messed up the first time, and what finally clicked. The first thing Amish gardeners understand is that you don't water the bed, you water the root zone. Most of us water like we're washing the ground. We spray until everything looks evenly wet, and we feel like we did our job because we can see it. But roots aren't sipping from the surface, especially once summer hits. Roots want moisture a few inches down where temperature swings are calmer. So what they do instead is focus watering in a small area, slowly, and below the surface when possible. The method I learned is basically a buried reservoir approach. Some folks call it clay pot irrigation, some call it alas, but I'm going to describe it the way I saw it done. Simple, practical, and built around what you can get your hands on. You start with an unglazed clay pot, not glazed, unglazed. The whole point is that water can seep through the clay slowly. For a typical backyard bed, a 2-quart to 1-gallon pot is a good starting point. If you're doing bigger spacing, like tomatoes at 24 inches, you can go up to a 2-gallon pot. The Amish neighbor I learned from used whatever size made sense for the crop spacing. He wasn't measuring with a tape like a scientist. He was matching the pot to the plant layout. Here's the key. You plug the drainage hole. Most pots have a hole in the bottom. If you leave it open, the water dumps out and you've defeated the whole purpose. I've seen two common ways. One is a snug cork or rubber plug. The other is a simple smear of clay soil mixed with a little water until it's like putty, pressed into the hole and left to dry. That second method is the kind of thing I see Amish families do a lot. Use what's already on the farm. Now you bury that pot so the rim sits about 1 inch above the soil surface. Not flush, not deep. About an inch above keeps soil and mulch from falling in, and it also gives you a clean opening to fill. If you bury it too deep, you'll constantly be digging it out. If you leave it too high, you'll lose moisture and it'll heat up faster. Placement matters. For peppers, I like 1 pot between 2 plants if they're about 18 inches apart. For tomatoes, 1 pot between 2 plants can work if the pot is larger, but I've had the best results with 1 pot per plant in the first year, just to learn the feel of it. Beans and cucumbers, 1 pot can serve a small section if the plants are clustered, because their roots spread and share moisture better than a single big feeder like a tomato. And here's your first USDA zone reality check. In zones 8 to 9, where heat comes earlier and nights stay warm, you'll get more evaporation and faster plant demand. That usually means you'll either use a slightly larger pot or you'll fill more often, sometimes every day in peak heat. In zones 6 to 7, you can often fill every 2 to 3 days once your soil and mulch are working with you. In zones 3 to 5, especially early summer when nights are cool, you might be surprised how long a single fill lasts, sometimes 3 to 4 days, because the soil isn't baking overnight. Now, I'll be honest with you, the first year I tried this, I thought the pot would do all the work and I could just forget the rest of watering. That's not how it works. It's not magic, it's controlled moisture, and it works best when the rest of your garden system supports it. This next piece is where things really start to look different from a conventional garden. Once the pot is buried, the Amish method relies heavily on the soil being able to accept and hold that moisture. If your soil is compacted, sandy, or low in organic matter, the water will either move away too fast or it won't spread evenly, so they build the sponge first. What I watched an Amish neighbor do, more than once, was amend the planting area with compost and a little bit of aged manure. Worked in shallow, not deep tilling. More like a broad fork loosened than compost mixed into the top 4 to 6 inches. That top layer becomes a moisture holding zone. For a new bed, think in terms of 1 to 2 inches of compost spread and mixed in. If you're dealing with really tired soil, 2 inches makes a noticeable difference. If you've got heavy clay, the compost helps the soil open up so moisture can move. If you've got sandy soil, compost helps it hold onto water like a sponge instead of letting it drain away. And you don't have to overthink it. The Amish families I've learned from don't treat compost like a boutique product. It's a steady practice, a little every year, and over time the soil becomes easier, darker, and more forgiving. Now here's the part that surprised me the most. They don't leave the surface bare. Most of us water, then leave the soil exposed like a skillet. And then we wonder why we're watering again tomorrow. Amish and Mennonite gardeners lean on mulch because mulch is basically insurance against evaporation. After the pots are buried and the plants are in, you mulch around everything, but you keep the pot opening accessible. I've seen straw used a lot, especially in Lancaster County. I've also seen shredded leaves, and with some Mennonite growers, you'll see more use of old hay or even chopped cover crop residues. Because the goal is the same, cover the soil in a 2 to 4 inch layer. If you're in zones 8 to 9, don't be shy with mulch. Go closer to 4 inches because the sun is relentless. In zones 6 to 7, 2 to 3 inches is often enough. In zones 3 to 5, 2 inches early, then add more as summer heat arrives so you don't keep the soil too cold in spring. And let me be straight with you about something. Mulch isn't just about water. It's part of that system I mentioned. Mulch protects soil life improves structure improves moisture retention, and moisture retention keeps plants steady, which reduces stress, and stressed plants are like neon signs to pests. Now, once the pots are in and the beds are mulched, the actual watering becomes almost boring, which is exactly what you want. You fill the pot until it's nearly full, then you cover the opening. Not airtight, just covered. At this point, I want to be upfront here because I think honesty matters more than hype. Realistic first-year expectations are this. You're not going to cut watering down to once a week in the middle of July if your soil is poor and you're still learning. What you will notice, if you do this right, is that your plants don't swing as hard between soaked and stressed. You'll see steadier growth, fewer midday droops, and you'll be able to skip days without guilt. By the second year, after you've improved soil and you've learned how your garden drinks, that's when the real efficiency shows up. That's still a win, and I'd rather you start with honest expectations and be pleasantly surprised. Now, here's a small detail that makes a big difference: how you space pots and how you decide what gets one. For high-value, high-stress crops, tomatoes, peppers, cucumbers, I prioritize them first. For things like lettuce or radishes, I don't bother. They're quick and shallow. For squash, I'll use one pot near the crown. But squash roots are aggressive and they'll find moisture. The pot just keeps them from wilting in heat waves. Also, pay attention to your plant varieties. I've had Amish neighbors grow big paste tomatoes like Amish paste and slicing tomatoes like brandywine. Those plants can drink. A pot system keeps them consistent, but they still need volume. For peppers, varieties like California Wonder or King of the North respond beautifully to steady moisture. For cucumbers, something like Marketmore 76 is tough, but it still produces better when it's not stressed. Now, right about here, after you've got the pots working and the mulch on and you're starting to see that calm, steady soil, this is usually the moment people ask, "Okay, Paul, how often do I fill them?" And the answer is you watch the plant, you watch the weather, and you check the pot like it's a fuel gauge. In mild weather, you might fill every 3 days. In a heat wave, it might be daily. If you get a good soaking rain, you might skip filling for a day or two because the soil around the pot is already charged up. The Amish neighbor I learned from didn't do a schedule. He did observation. He'd stick a finger in the soil under the mulch, 2 or 3 inches down, and he'd check the pot. That's it. And if you're thinking, that sounds like a lot of checking, it actually isn't. It's less time than dragging a hose around, and it's more accurate than guessing from the surface. If you're picking up what I'm putting down and you want more of these deep dives into how Amish and Mennonite families approach the garden, hit subscribe. I've got a lot more of these coming, and I try to share them the way I learned them, practical and honest. Now let's keep going, because there are a couple details that make this method either frustrating or downright smooth. One of those details is keeping the pot from turning into a mess. The first time I tried this, I left the pot open between fillings. That was a mistake. Soil fell in, mulch blew in. I even had a mosquito issue once because the water sat open. The Amish fix is simple. Cover it. I've seen flat stones used, just a rock that sits over the rim. I've seen a little scrap of wood. I've even seen a piece of tin set loosely over it. You're not sealing it like a jar. You're just shading the water and keeping debris out. And if you're worried about kids, pets, or critters, a loose cover also prevents accidents and keeps raccoons from treating your pots like a curiosity project. Another detail is how close you plant to the pot. Don't jam roots directly against it. Give it a few inches of soil so moisture can spread outward. Think of the pot as a central well and the soil as the sponge. If roots are right up against the clay, you can get uneven growth and you can disturb the pot when you cultivate. Now, let's talk about something most folks don't consider. What happens when you get a big rain? Conventional gardens can turn into a puddle problem. Then you're watering again because the surface dried, even though the deeper soil stayed wet. With this buried method, a good rain actually charges the whole system. The mulch slows evaporation, the compost holds moisture, and the pot keeps feeding steadily afterward. It's like the rain becomes part of the plan instead of a random event. And this is where I want to circle back to that system idea one more time because it really matters. This isn't a standalone trick. The pot is one piece. The compost is one piece. The mulch is one piece. Your spacing and variety choice is one piece. When they all support each other, you get steadier plants with less work. When you try to use the pot without improving soil or without mulch, you still get some benefit, but you'll wonder why it's not as impressive as you hoped. Now, there are a few patterns I've noticed over the years, things I did myself for a long time, so no judgment here, that tend to keep people from getting the full benefit of this approach. The first pattern is watering by appearance. If the surface looks dry, we assume the plant is thirsty. I did that for years, but the Amish approach is to check where roots live, 2 to 4 inches down, under mulch. The surface can look dry and still be perfectly moist below. When you stop chasing surface dryness, you stop overwatering and you stop stressing plants with inconsistent moisture. The second pattern is treating watering like a standalone task, separate from soil building. I used to think water is water, compost is compost, but they're connected. If your soil can't hold moisture, you'll water more no matter what tool you use. Amish and Mennonite gardeners build the soil so watering becomes easier. They're not trying to win against summer. They're preparing the bed so summer has less to steal. The third pattern is skipping mulch because it feels messy or because you're worried about pests. I get it. I used to leave soil bare because it looked tidy. But bare soil is basically an open invitation to evaporation. The Amish alternative is to mulch and then manage the system. Keep mulch a little back from plant stems, avoid burying crowns, and keep airflow reasonable. And a drier surface under mulch can actually reduce certain fungal issues because you're not constantly wetting leaves with overhead watering. And the last pattern is expecting instant dramatic results in the first week and then abandoning it. I've done that with plenty of garden ideas. With this method, the first improvement you notice is steadiness, plants that don't panic in the afternoon. The bigger improvements, less watering, better yields, fewer stress problems, tend to build as the soil improves and as you learn your garden's rhythm. That's not a flaw. That's how real systems work. Now, I promised you a simple end-of-video technique that stops evaporation at the source, and I meant it. Here's something I picked up from an Amish family that I haven't seen mentioned in most gardening guides, and it's so simple you might roll your eyes at first. When you fill that clay pot, don't just set a rock over it and call it done. Take a small piece of burlap or even an old cotton rag and lay it over the opening first, then set the flat stone on top. That cloth does two things. First, it reduces the little gaps where hot air can circulate and pull moisture out of the pot opening. The stone shades it, but the cloth blocks that airflow. Second, it catches any dust, mulch bits, or insects before they drop into the water. It keeps the water cleaner and the pot opening calmer. I started doing that about 2 summers ago, and the difference showed up in the way the pot level dropped. It wasn't night and day like a miracle, but it was noticeable, especially in a stretch of hot, windy days where evaporation is sneaky. And here's the part I didn't expect. It also reduced crusting right around the rim because I wasn't splashing and wetting that little ring of soil every time I filled. The area stayed more stable, and the mulch stayed where I put it. If you want to make it even more practical, I just keep a little stack of rag squares in your shed, fill the pot, lay the rag, set the stone, done. It's the kind of quiet, sensible detail that makes a whole system run smoother. So if you take anything from today, I hope it's this. What I've learned from Amish and Mennonite gardeners about watering isn't about a gadget or a shortcut. It's about putting water where the roots can use it, protecting that moisture with soil and mulch, and letting the whole garden work together instead of fighting itself. If any of this changed how you think about watering, I'd love to hear about it in the comments, especially if you've tried clay pots, heavy mulch, or any kind of buried watering method in your own beds. And hit subscribe if you want more of these deep dives into how traditional communities grow food with methods that have worked for generations. Thanks for spending time with me today. I'll see you in the next one.